On the foggy evening of February the 8th, 1983, the world of horse racing was shaken to its core when Shergar, one of the most celebrated racehorses in history, was kidnapped from the Barry Stud Farm in Ireland. This crime remains one of the most infamous unsolved mysteries in sporting history. If you're round about my age, you probably never heard of today's topic. But when it occurred in 1982, it was everywhere. It was one of those unescapable stories. Shergar was an exceptional Irish-bred, British-trained racing horse, whose brief but brilliant racing career catapulted him to legendary status in the world of horse racing. His remarkable achievements on the track and his tragic disappearance cemented his place in racing lore. But before we get to the kidnapping, we'll have a quick recap of his racing career. Born in 1778, Shergar was a bay coat with distinctive white markings, a blaze on his face and 4 white socks. He was bred by Aga Khan, a prominent figure in the horse racing world. From the beginning, Shergar showed promise, with a powerful build and a unique racing style that included running with his tongue hanging out. Shergar's racing career began in September 98 as a 2-year-old. He won his maiden race at the Newbury, foreshadowing the greatness to come. However, it was in 1981 as a 3-year-old that Shergar truly came to his own and dominated the racing scene. The pinnacle of Shergar's career came in 1981 at the Epsom Derby, one of the most prestigious races in the world. Ridden by a 19-year-old jockey, Shergar started as the favourite and delivered a performance that would go down in history. He won by a astounding 10 lengths, the largest margin in the race's 245-year history. This victory not only secured Shergar's place in racing history, but also captured the public's imagination. Following his Epsom Derby triumph, Shergar continued his winning streak. He won the Irish Sweeps Derby by 4 lengths. He claimed victory in the King's George VI and Queen Elizabeth stakes, again by 4 lengths. These victories, along with others, being named European Horse of the Year in 1981. Shergar's success made him a household name. He was described as a national hero in Ireland and one of the most recognisable sports personalities, horse or human, in Ireland. Shergar's on-track success translated into immense financial value. He is valued at approximately 10 million. Shergar still had higher to soar, as he was due to compete in the Arc in France, which is regarded as the most prestigious horse races in Europe. To prepare for the Arc, Shergar was entered into the St. Leger Stakes, which was going to be the longest race he had took part in so far. In this race, Shergar, disappointed, ended the race in 4th place. This confused the owner, who had Shergar tested to see if he was in poor health or had any injuries. With a test showing he was completely healthy and not wanting to risk any other losses, the decision was made to retire Shergar to preserve his immense racing record and to capitalise on his potential of being a stud. Aga Khan, Shergar's owner, received multiple offers to sell his horse. He decided instead to syndicate Shergar, selling 40 shares worth, each worth about 400,000 each in 1982. Shergar was retired to the Balmoral Stud Farm in Ireland, where he would live out his retirement being treated lavishly and getting very familiar with the females, as Shergar would be pimped out by his owner for breeding at 80,000 per one. Shergar was set for a very relaxing life. On February the 8th, around 8:30 in the morning, Jim Fitzgerald, Shergar's head groom, was spending the evening with his wife and 5 children in his house, which was located on the same grounds with Shergar. When there was a knock on the door, his son answered, only to be met with a group of masked gunmen. 2 of them locked Fitzgerald's family in a room while the other demanded that Jim take him to Shergar. Jim, having multiple weapons aimed at him and his family, was in no position to argue. When Shergar was brought outside, the masked man pulled out a walkie-talkie, following which a horse trailer pulled up. With this, about half a dozen men loaded Shergar into the truck, and Jim was blindfolded and taken into a second vehicle. After several hours being driven around, they stopped on a road in the middle of nowhere and let Jim out. He was warned not to call the police, else he and his entire family would be murdered. They informed him that he would soon be contacted for a ransom demand from $2 million by someone calling themselves King Neptune. And with that, they drove off, leaving Jim to wander through the darkness of the Irish countryside until he stumbled across the town of Kilcock. Yes, I'm being serious. Jim found a phone and called his brother to come pick him up. Fearing for his family, he chose not to call anyone else until he was back at the stables. Once he saw that his family was safe, he called his boss, the stud manager, Ghislaine Jan, it's French, I don't know how you pronounce it, who then attempted to reach Aga Khan, who was in Switzerland. The Frenchman also contacted Shergar's vet, who is also a shareholder. From here, the manager of the Irish Thoroughbred Breeders Association, a finance minister and justice minister were all informed of Shergar's kidnapping. By 4 AM in the morning, they managed to get hold of Khan. They told him to immediately call the police. By this time, however, 8 hours had already passed since the kidnapping, giving the criminals a strong head start. As the search began in the early hours of the 9th of February, not only were the police 8 hours behind, but the thieves couldn't have picked a better day to steal Shergar, as the 9th was the day of a racehorse sale, with the roads and streets being filled with horse boxes, compounding on the already difficult tasks they faced. There was little that could be done. The delayed response to the kidnapping and the horse sale occurring made it practically impossible to track Shergar. The only option was to wait for them to contact them for the ransom. On the evening of the 10th, a call came through with the stud manager, the Frenchman. He had been informed by the police that he needed to keep them on the line for 90 seconds to track where the call was coming from. He would play dumb, still for time. However, the callers, being wise to this, would hang up around about the 80-second mark and then call back, preventing any tracking. At times, the Frenchman struggled to understand the thick Irish accent of the kidnappers, and the kidnappers would get frustrated with the Frenchman's pronunciations, not understanding what he was saying. Eventually, the kidnappers got frustrated with him, understandable, and demanded to speak to Khan or someone close to him. However, they were all bored in other countries at the time. While this is going on, a call was made to the BBC newsroom in Belfast, where an anonymous caller said negotiations would only be done if 3 horse racing journalists from London were present. The journalists were Derek Thompson, John Oakesley, and Peter Camplin. They had to be at the Europa Hotel the following evening. By this time, the world knew of Shergar's disappearance. When they arrived at the hotel, they received a call telling them to lose the media that was following them around and go to a farm 30 miles from Belfast. With the help of the police, they managed to sneak out of the hotel without the press noticing by sneaking out of the hotel through a kitchen after the service entrance into a waiting car. On the way to the farm, the journalists got lost, not knowing their way round the Irish countryside until they were stopped by 5 armed men wearing masks. At first they believed this to be the group that kidnapped Shergar, but no, it was the police who thought the journalists would probably get lost. Eventually they all made it to the farm, and it was decided that Derek Thompson would do the talking when the kidnappers would reach out. When the call came through, the thieves demanded a payment of $40,000 for the horse, a price that was much lower than $2 million they demanded from Jim Fitzgerald. The journalists refused to talk of any payment until they had proof that Shergar was still alive. They went back and forth over about 10 calls, with each ending around the 80-second mark, until after 8 hours of negotiating, around about 1 in the morning, the caller stayed on the line for 85 seconds, giving them enough time to track the tool. Thompson, who was hopeful they could finally track down the thief, only to be told that the man who tracked the calls had gone off shift at midnight. After this, the calls stopped. It is now believed that this side of negotiations were a distraction to keep the police busy and confused. In the main line of negotiations between the thieves and Aga Khan, the thieves were struggling to make headway due to Shergar being syndicated, as Aga Khan didn't have the power to agree to any demands due to him just being one out of the 36 shareholders. For any demands to be met, all the shareholders had to agree to it. This meant that negotiations dragged on for days, as there was many disagreements between the shareholders on what action should be taken. Some thought that the 2 million was a small fee compared to the potential profits from years or decades of breeding, while others believed by paying the ransom it would only cause other racehorses to become targets of similar ransom attempts. In the end, however, the shareholders decided that they were only going to continue with the negotiations if proof was provided that Shergar was still alive. On the 12th of February, they received a call that proof that Shergar was still alive was left at the Rosedene Hotel. At the hotel, they found a package containing several photos of Shergar's head next to a copy of the Irish Times, which was dated the 11th of February. The pictures definitely showed Shergar, but they did little to reassure the shareholders, as why wasn't the whole body in the picture? To the shareholders, this was a sign that Shergar was already dead. At 10:40 PM the same day, they received another call from the thief, where the shareholders informed the thieves that there wasn't enough proof that Shergar was alive. The caller responded with, "Well, if you're not satisfied, that's it," and the phone went down. This was the last call they received. No other attempts were ever made to ransom Shergar, and from there, the media started to milk the story from all it was worth. They ridiculed Jim Murphy, the man in charge of the investigation. They began reporting that police was using psychics. Shergar's body was never found, leading to wild speculation of his whereabouts, with reports saying that Shergar was alive in some hippie commune in the Irish countryside. Others alleged that the New Orleans Mafia had stolen Shergar and that he may have been given to Colonel Gaddafi. Others claimed that they saw Lord Luca riding Shergar. It's been debated for years who is behind the kidnapping and what happened to him, with rival horse breeders being considered. While the case remains officially unsolved, the most prevalent theory is that it was no other than the IRA who committed the kidnapping to raise funds for the ongoing troubles. The IRA in the past had committed similar kidnappings of people. As well as this, a magazine for a weapon was found at the stables where Shergar was taken, which matched a weapon that the IRA favoured. On top of this, Sean O'Callaghan, a former IRA member turned informant, claimed the IRA were behind the kidnapping and that Shergar was killed only a few hours after being taken. Apparently, the IRA didn't bring anyone who was trained with horses with them, so when Shergar panicked, they had no idea how to calm him down. Shergar injured himself during the panic, so the decision was made to kill him. This is what has been accepted as the most likely course of events by the police and the syndicate, though no arrest has ever been made and the IRA never took responsibility. The kidnapping of Shergar remains one of the most tragic events in horse racing history. It led to significant improvements in security for valuable racehorses, and more than 4 decades later, it's inspired numerous books, documentaries, and even a film.